I like to say that river guys make really good entrepreneurs because we do tend to have to improvise. There's a high level of comfort with discomfort.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Doug Davenport. If you haven't met me, I'm Executive Director of Prospect Silicon Valley. This is a highlight series that we're doing called People of Prospect. If you've been involved or watched any of our 15-minute breaks in the early days of the pandemic, we've expanded it to half an hour so we can get a lot more conversation in. We hope you really like that. This is, our kind of concerted effort to connect all of you with really interesting people and influential people in our ecosystem, working with Prospect Silicon Valley, and take a little deeper dive into what they're doing and how they got here. Today, we are very fortunate to speak with Sedale Turbovsky. He's CEO and founder of OpenGrants, which I will let him describe in detail, but it is a great search tool that's really helping connect organizations with public funding. So he's been in this entrepreneurial realm for quite some time. I've known Sedale, for 8-10 years now, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I think you're also kind of a coffee guy, so I'm curious, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking mud water, so I'm more of a matcha and mud water guy. So just for those, and they don't pay me to talk about this stuff, but mud water is a blend of chai and adaptogenic mushrooms and a variety of roots and other things. So it's good stuff. Highly recommend it if you want to have a different sort of experience in the morning. It's good.
I was not expecting that. That's interesting. Well, I feel boring because I'm just drinking Stumptown from Portland.
Well, I'm happy. I'll send you some. You can try it out over the holidays. You let me know what you think.
Well, great. So why don't we start with this? Just simply kind of straight up, tell us about OpenGrants.
Sure. So OpenGrants, we built OpenGrants because we saw a lot of issues with the way that public funding and funding in general is connected to entrepreneurs, the way it's deployed and dispersed. So, and actually New York Times this morning had a really cool article about this issue, which is that, Silicon Valley kicked off with government grants and government funding. Like the government built Silicon Valley. And for the last 50 years, all of the most transformational innovations have come out of federal R&D projects, publicly funded projects. You've got what makes cell phones capable, autonomous vehicles, the internet, all of this stuff. And it's insane to think that over the last 20 years, we've increased our funding, but the other trend line that's happening is that the return on those investments has just started to tank. It's going downhill, and we're spending more money than ever. And there's other issues that are at play there, but the big problem that is proven out by all of the data available is that because of the culture of incumbency that's been built around these funding programs, and because of the lack of tools, our civil servants don't have the ability to actually engage a diverse and wide group of innovators to bring the absolute best technology and innovation to the government and fund those projects anymore. And so OpenGrants was built around creating transparency and equity and accessibility when it comes to funding in general, not only from the government, but also from family offices and just there's immense centers of wealth in our country. We're very lucky to have access to all of that. But unfortunately, those of us who have real access to it are few and far between. And for a lot of innovators and entrepreneurs who are coming out of labs or universities or just trying to get by, they don't necessarily know who to talk to or who to speak to or understand what the opportunities are. So we built OpenGrants to not only be a search tool, as you mentioned, so that you can find funding opportunities, but also to really bridge that gap and organize the ecosystem of support. So as an entrepreneur, you can sign up on the platform, you can find opportunities for funding, and then you can get connected to the people who can help you navigate and make the connections you need to actually secure those funding opportunities.
I think a lot of people have shared the the experience of knowing money's out there, but it kind of comes to you by word of mouth. The sources are just completely, stovepiped or just really fractured. And so your ability to consolidate that, I think, is really fantastic. Was there a personal story behind why you decided to go after this? What was the inspiration for you deciding to go into OpenGrants?
Yeah, it's deeply personal for sure. So from like my own background as a boy growing up, my family are all entrepreneurs. The bulk of my relatives have their own businesses, run their own companies. Our family's ranch is over 100 years old. And so I grew up with all of these folks who were very entrepreneurial minded people. And so that was just part of my DNA growing up. And as I, had the good luck and fortune of progressing throughout my career, I ended up working as a consultant for a company called Momentum, formerly known as Grant Farm, and watched them put together these massive projects where they were able to, secure government funding and electrify an entire port, or bring together all these really cool partners and deploy, the next generation of transportation technologies in an entire ecosystem. And so it became really apparent that, with the right resources and information and understanding, you can access and actually use the government as a partner in your business. And that flew in the face of my experience as a young, as a young kid growing up, hearing, my folks talk about, taxes and all these other things and their experience with the government. And it became even more apparent that, entrepreneurs in general, they're paying taxes and they're working through regulation. And so they have this kind of negative experience. They don't see the government as a partner. They see the government as as this burden that, sucks away their money at the end of the year and is something to be avoided or just navigated, but not leveraged. And so part of what I saw and part of our central thesis at OpenGrants is, as I alluded to earlier, the government has been historically this incredible partner for innovators, this partner who will de-risk ideas at an earlier stage than anyone else. They have the biggest risk profile. Like, they'll take on anything, right? If it's moonshot ideas, that's what the government funds, because a lot of banks and traditional VCs, they might not even want to get interested or get involved at such an early stage. So the government has traditionally been the one funding like the truly breakthrough innovation that's out there. And we need that more than ever in the United States. We've seen that with the pandemic. We need it more than ever globally. We're facing the biggest challenges that humanity has ever faced. We don't quite have the technology to solve it. And so as my career progressed, I developed this thesis that, hey, we need to find a really great way for our civil servants who are actively looking to deploy these massive amounts of capital to stand up the communities and societies that are representative of the future. They're trying to build, carbon neutral cities and trying to push forward battery technology and innovation. And so as I was able to work with these technologists through my work with Grant Farm and Momentum, and as I was able to have my own startup, in fact, it just became increasingly clear that we need a better way to harness the government as an asset. And as entrepreneurs and innovators, as community leaders, as builders, as nonprofit leaders, whatever you're doing, if you're innovating and building the future, the government should be there and should be involved in a meaningful way, because as it stands now, they have these very deep pockets. They have these big reserves of cash and capital, and they're the ones who can ultimately jumpstart and move things forward for humanity.
So someone that signs on to the OpenGrants platform, as opposed to needing to sign on to many, many, many lists, why don't you just very quickly say what their experience is in being able to kind of, create the list that matters to them?
Of course, yeah. So if you sign up for OpenGrants, it's free to create an account. So you can sign up in the basic account. What you'll be able to do is go in and search for grant funding. And so you'll sign up, you'll create a profile, you'll search for grants. And then when you find a grant that is interesting to you, you can just click on a button that says apply. And there's two options. You can click apply and you'll get either routed to an expert. So there's a $99 deposit where you will actually meet with an expert. They'll scope a project based on the grant you found, and they'll work with you. Or you can just click DIY, and there's guides we've developed for the different opportunities that are on the platform that will walk you through step by step what you need to do. So really, the platform is built to support just any entrepreneur coming in cold with no idea. Like, if you don't know what a DUNS number is, or SAM registration, or any of those any of that terminology, you don't know what Fastlane is and research.gov and what an ORCID number is. Like, you don't actually have to know all of that. We can step you through that process with our guides, or you can use the platform because it backs into an ecosystem we've organized of experts. So there's these consultants around the United States and globally who help companies. This is what they do. There's a whole industry here. They help companies navigate public funding. And they'll do everything from writing grants to help you strategize about how to build relationships with partners. And so you can work with those folks, get connected to them, and we'll make these curated connections for you. The other really cool opportunity is that you'll be able to actually use a tool called Quick Start. If the search is like, you get to the search, like, I don't even know what to search for. We have a tool within the platform that's free to use called Quick Start. And I think that's really cool for people who just have no idea what's available, right? And the neat thing about Quick Start is it'll take you 1 minute, 2 minutes to fill out some details. And then the platform will tell you, oh, hey, there's about $1 million, or maybe there's $10 million available for you. And this is how you do it. This is how you access it. And so, what we want to do, and our mission here, is to make this process just a turnkey part and also a regular part of entrepreneurship. We feel strongly that entrepreneurs should at least be aware that the government can be a resource, and they should have the tools to quickly and efficiently assess whether or not that's a viable opportunity without, spending thousands of dollars and having to, pay a consultant or retainer. So that's what that's the experience that we're aiming for on the platform.
I'm really excited that Prospect Silicon Valley and OpenGrants are going to be working together. So, Sedale and I have been working things out, and, from our perspective, being an organization that, one, is really trying to pull together the ecosystem of innovators that actually make these solutions possible in our little way. We definitely see there's a lot of really talented, really hungry startups out there that need the kind of connection and support that we can provide. We're working real hard to get those startups connected with us and with our partners. And we think that OpenGrants is an incredibly good platform for not only connecting them with the grant funding and the other kind of sources of money and investment that you can traditionally provide, but we hope to expand that ecosystem with other strategic advisors and really interesting folks that can be a resource to folks that work with us. So I'm excited about that. I hope you're excited about that.
I am super excited. I think I love what Prospect Silicon Valley is doing. For me, I'm fully aware. I think all of the entrepreneurs I meet with are mostly smarter than me. I'm really good at doing a few things, but the people who are going to build like the life-changing technology, that's not me. And I'm, fully aware of that and accept it. So I want to be the one giving them the tools to make sure that they can go and solve things, because I know I'm not going to. And I think that Prospect Silicon Valley provides a lot of that. And so we're very excited to be working with you, and look forward to rolling out a variety of things with you over the coming months. But I just, entrepreneurs for me have always been like the heroes, and they are, and part of that's, watching my family be those people. But part of it is seeing, hey, the real cool solutions, the stuff that's changing the world, it's not coming from just like some stodgy, person who's been thinking about doing things the same way. The really cool things that are fixing the problems out there require contrarian thinking. They require people who are like, we shouldn't do things the same way we've been doing them. Obviously, that's not working. Let's fix it. And so finding people who have that mentality of, hey, this is broken, let's fix it, that's really important. And that's at the heart of why we believe in small businesses and why we believe in entrepreneurs, is that they're thinking about that. They're thinking, hey, this thing is broken, let's fix it.
So let's talk a little bit about your personal path. So I knew you. I think I first met you when you were doing a project or doing a startup called Carbon Blue, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what you did before that, but maybe just tell us a bit about kind of what's happened in the past and your experience as an entrepreneur.
I took a very non-traditional approach to I think life actually. So my parents were both academics. As I was going through high school and preparing to leave the nest, the very first thing I did was I bought a van from a mortuary for $300, and I grabbed all my stuff and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be a river guide, and I'm going to live in this van, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life." And so then off I drove into the wilderness. So I spent a good chunk of time working as a river guide, actually leading rafting, kayaking expeditions. I worked in Argentina, Chile, worked throughout the Patagonia region, and then also up and down the West Coast here in the United States. So spent a bit of time doing that. And while I was doing that, as you can imagine, rafting is not, it's not super mentally demanding. It's more of a physical activity. The gist of it is go downstream around the rocks. If you've ever done whitewater rafting, it's not a lot of brain work that you're doing necessarily.
This way, really fast.
Yeah.
Turn.
Yep, exactly. Not a whole lot to unpack there. So I found myself with a lot of time on my hands between rafting trips and such. And I actually started a consultancy, doing things like building websites and helping customers tell stories. Got really into a lot of like low code and no code tools around data analytics. Built some products for folks using things like Tableau and Power BI. And I just really got into tech because it was something I could do remotely. I've been working remote almost my entire career. It was something I could do remotely while I traveled. And, all of this kind of was born out of a goal that I made growing up around Sacramento. I saw a lot of people who sort of just trudged off to the Capitol every day and didn't seem overly excited about their jobs. They weren't like enthused about it. They were just kind of doing it. I heard a lot of people talking about, gutting it out until they retired, or just grinding away until they retired. And it just seemed like a very negative atmosphere and a negative narrative. And so my goal, and I say this recognizing fully that there was a lot of privilege and other things that came to pass to allow me to do this, but my goal was to live life on my own terms and do things I wanted to do instead of things I didn't want to do. And it was this really binary decision for me of like, okay, I can be like, for a long time, I lived in a van. Everything I owned was in an 80-liter backpack, and I didn't have a bank account. And I just sort of, traveled around and worked from here to there. And it was a really good time. I learned a lot and managed to talk my way into some really significant contracting and work opportunities, and started in South America, really doing consulting for bigger brands, and ultimately moved back to California to run Carbon Blue. So spent a lot of time just freelancing, learning about entrepreneurship and business. Gained really was blessed to have some awesome mentors, including Sean Garvey, who's the CEO over at Momentum, who really, I connected with them during the Carbon Blue, while we were building Carbon Blue, and they actually helped write a grant for us. And that was really like what opened up my eyes. I was like, oh man, so there's all this money and it's just kind of around. And if you can tell a really good story, you can go get it. And that kind of spoke to my background with storytelling and graphic design and telling data-driven stories as well. And so it all sort of started to coalesce at about that time. But yeah, I was very fortunate. I ended up working and leading different trips around all over Argentina. Ended up spending some time over in Nepal. It's been a good adventure so far.
So really the story is OpenGrants can be successful because you used to be a river guide, and you're essentially doing the same thing for lots of people that are trying to navigate pathways to money. That's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it is actually, I like to say that river guides make really good entrepreneurs because we do tend to have to improvise frequently. And there's also, there's a high level of comfort with discomfort that comes from being a guide. There's, I could tell you stories for days about different, like just very uncomfortable situations, like seeing all of the gear and everything that you need for a whole trip. You're out, you're done. There's no other support. So you're on a self-supported trip. You're out in the wilderness. You're 3 or 4 days away from like anybody else. And all of a sudden the boat with all of your equipment just like wraps around a rock and goes underwater. And, that's your next job is like, okay, well, how do we get the boat out? And how do we dry off everyone's gear? How do we like take care of all of these customers who are supposed to be having a great time, and at the same time, like not kill ourselves while we pull this boat out of the water? And so, yeah, you do develop a lot of not only just sort of skills around creative problem solving and getting good at being very adaptable to situations, but then there's also just the aspect of, learning about people. I mean, we've had, I've worked on the boats. You're stuck with people and you're telling stories and listening to their stories for hours and hours every day. And you hear a wide diversity of opinions, a wide diversity of thoughts and struggles. And some people are, real serious and talk about really off-putting things. And it's just, it's this whole universe of experience that is very valuable as an entrepreneur, just learning how to listen and understand pain points and struggles, things like that.
For entrepreneurs that might be either in this audience this morning or is going to be watching this on social media, what's your number one piece of advice?
Number one piece of advice for entrepreneurs, I think, is to, I guess it's to ignore the naysayers, to be committed to your idea and recognize that you have this like probably a bit contrarian idea, and just lean into it. I can't tell you the amount of really entrenched people who I've talked to about OpenGrants, and they're just like, this is never going to work. That's a terrible idea. And I get it all the time. And sometimes, I'll get on a call and it'll literally just be an hour of somebody who is potentially like a thought leader in the space, highly knowledgeable, very senior, and they'll just dump on us for an hour. They're just like, this is awful. And you get really used to it. You get used to rejection and those things, but don't, if you really believe in your concept and there's some real basis behind what you're doing, then just go for it. Like lean in, don't give up, and don't listen to anybody else. You have to take advice and feedback from people with the lens that it is advice and feedback, but they don't know what you know, and they're not. The reason they are where they are is because they know certain things, and the reason that industries change and the disruption happens is because other people discover new things. And just remember that innovation happens at the edge. It doesn't happen from those people who are pulling the centers of those industries forward. So just believe in yourself and go for it.
What keeps you productive?
I think ultimately I love doing what we're doing, and I really believe in it. And I think that at the end of the day, when you think about what the world is facing, we're on a mission to empower all of the smart people to help humanity survive. And that's one of our reasons for being is we think and know that entrepreneurship and small businesses not only are important for the economy and for recovery from post-COVID and all these other things, but innovation is what's going to solve climate change. Innovation is what's going to solve hunger. Innovation is what's going to get humanity where it needs to be. And without the right tools, it can't progress as fast and as quickly and as efficiently as it needs to. And so we're building that. The other motivator, frankly, is just, I have 2 kids. And I want them to grow up in a place that's dramatically better than, what the world is now. And so that's also a big motivator for me is, I tell my son all the time, I'm like, hey, by the time you are old enough to drive, I hope that you don't have to drive. Like, I would love to see a world where we have like nice, sustainable public transportation, last mile solutions, where things are connected and where everything functions in a way that supports people living really like fulfilled lives. And I think the innovation is going to get us there. So that's a big driver for me as well.
So I really want to thank you, Sedale, for all the open-mindedness and the collaboration that you and I have shared since we've started on working on our partnership. The insights that you shared today, and I got to learn that you used to be a river guide, which was really cool to hear. I think that's this has been a great conversation, and just really appreciate what you have brought to this conversation this morning. So once again, for everyone that's listening, thank you so much, and wish everyone a great holiday season, and be well and be safe.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.